Hello, Jamil.
Hey Albert, how's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Should I turn my camera on?
Yeah, if you want. Hello, good seeing you again.
Hey, good to
Thanks
see
for
you too.
supporting the Bitcoin Olympics hackathon.
Yeah, appreciate the invite.
Yeah. So let's just jump into it. We got half an hour here, and I'm sure the viewers, our audience, are really interested to know about what you're working on, about how you became one of the leaders in the Ordinals movement, and also being on the Bitcoin frontier. What are some of those opportunities that, if you had time, that you
Yeah.
would build for the next Bitcoin halving, right? So let's start from the top. Let, can you let us know about your background a little bit so the audience gets to know you?
Yeah, sure. I'll give a bit of background on myself and of Gamma as a whole. So Gamma started in around September of 2021. That was around the time of the past like NFT bull cycle when so much was happening on Ethereum and Solana and other chains. But what I noticed was that there was a relative lack of attention on Bitcoin. Everybody was focused on these other chains and what you could do with them, but there was a prevailing narrative among VCs, some builders and collectors that basically Bitcoin was a thing of the past and only used as a rock or store of value. And it's been pretty clear over the past year and especially over the couple months that that thesis simply isn't true. That there's so much you can do on top of Bitcoin and so much that you can build. And so that's what we've been focusing on. It's basically building the future of Bitcoin digital assets. First on L2 with platforms like Stacks, and then now, of course, with Ordinals. But our experience and our thesis is basically how do we make assets on Bitcoin, NFTs on Bitcoin, or art digital artifacts on Bitcoin possible. Before then, my background is, and if anybody wants to talk about this as well, I'd be happy to one-on-one. Mainly in ML. So I worked for about 4.5 years as a machine learning engineer at Apple, working on like ML for embedded hardware like the AirPods and Apple Watch, and also some natural language understanding research. And started grad school, at Stanford in the same field. So that's sort of where my professional background is. But my side projects and hobbyist projects have always been in crypto, and now sort of that's turned into my real full-time life once starting Gamma.
Yeah, super. Thanks for that. Thanks for that great introduction. So we have quite the prolific experience, and did great with Gamma even before the Ordinals came around, and now you guys were able to launch very, very quickly, right? Early on
Yeah, I
in
think
the Ordinals craze.
it's pretty clear that first of all, we're not looking at jumping on a specific trend or whatever. If we were doing that, then we would have left Bitcoin a long time ago when the VC narratives were against us, or the prevailing narratives were against us. But it's pretty clear that ordinals are something quite unique and special. And I'll put it this way, not even just for digital assets themselves, but for Bitcoin as a whole. We can talk about things like the security budget and others, but I think one of the most interesting things, especially for those in the audience now at the hackathon, is that I think this is almost a turning point in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Like, I'll give one simple example. When we were launching the marketplace on Gamma, we wanted to make sure that we did everything in a trustless way, completely on L1 with PSBTs, like an OpenSea experience with MetaMask. And the problem is we could do the OpenSea side, like the marketplace side, but we didn't have any web wallets released at the time. In over a decade of Bitcoin developments, there weren't any wallets that could just sign transactions and return them to the client. No standards for this or anything like that of how you'd connect a wallet to an application and sign transactions. But just in a few months, we've seen what now, like 4, maybe more new wallets. That's incredible. We're seeing a whole new fundamental layer of Bitcoin infrastructure being built right now. And I think that's really the most exciting part. And it really shows that, ordinals are not only just an asset class within themselves, but they're also bringing together people from around the Bitcoin ecosystem to build tools around Bitcoin more in general.
No, thanks for that example. That's super. Actually, where do you? So we definitely want to hear what you had to say about like being on the frontier. I think is a unique experience, right? As entrepreneurs, we're on the frontier of let's say a trend. And so everything beyond that frontier line is uncharted territory, no maps, it's the wilderness. And only people building and pushing forward on frontier knows what works and what doesn't. And those things that don't work are potentially the next big ideas, right? And so, but before we jump into that, what do you like? What's your vision of the sustainable Bitcoin economy? Like, how do you see this playing out? Fast forward a few years, and let's say we have this decentralized ecosystem of a bunch of things, and it's almost like you can decide. I mean, it'll be blended with what we have today, right? Well, how do you
Yep.
see that? Like what's like? Paint us a visual for that.
I think one of the things that the Ethereum ecosystem did really well was to build, useful tools and applications that generate wealth within the ecosystem. Wealth isn't generated by being extractive in the information economy, right? It's created by building new and innovative things that provide value to the world. And Ethereum tended to do that quite well. And so what you did is you saw new asset classes being created, new financial systems being created, things like Uniswap, things like NFTs in general, protocols that were being built. And these created a lot of value for the builders and those that were creating these companies. And what they would do is then they would create almost an economy within itself, right? Like Ethereum could be a place where people create companies, where people create value, and then where they reintroduce that value, into the ecosystem. And I don't think we've quite seen that in Bitcoin yet. Most of the applications have been, how do we get retailers to use Lightning in commerce in the real world? And that's equally important. But I think it's hard to achieve that effect of like almost a flywheel to kickstart, an economy where builders can build within the ecosystem, derive value from the ecosystem, make everybody more, more wealthy and more, and to build more things within the ecosystem. And I think Ordinals really helps catalyze that as well. People are already creating value from Ordinals marketplaces, Ordinals inscription services, wallets. You're starting to see basically a whole new economy of people interacting with each other solely on Bitcoin. People are making profits in Bitcoin and reinvesting them into the ecosystem. We're taking, companies like Magic Eden for the first time and Gamma and Ordinals Wallet and all others are making revenue in Bitcoin from people spending money in Bitcoin. And so I think
That's exciting.
it's a sort of something that I don't think we've seen in quite a long time in Bitcoin, since the days of things like Silk Road and other Bitcoin, marketplaces and etc. But I'm super excited about it because I think this will catalyze a whole new world of applications and infrastructure.
Yeah, for a long time, Bitcoin wasn't really used as money, right? This is a store of value. And now this is like you said, it's a catalyst. People are beginning to use Bitcoin as money now. And I think you bring up a good point about the flywheel, or the gravity well, or the engine. It's not turning it, right? It's turning in Ethereum, but it's not turning in Bitcoin. But we have a huge opportunity right now because Ordinals is sort of like these floodgates this pressure was building. Ordinals like punched a hole in that, right? But it's just like, is this a beginning? Is this a beginning of this new? Some people call it a movement. Some people call it like a revolution. Some people call it like Bitcoin 2.0 or the renaissance of Bitcoin, right? But I think all those are very fitting. So you mentioned the flywheel. What do you think is missing in the flywheel in order for it to turn on? Like you said, there's already people doing some cool stuff, but it's still not enough, right? I mean, this is going to be a collective effort. And if we really want to bring the context is before the next Bitcoin halving, if you had more time, what would be the top projects that you would work on, that you would hope to see some of these builders at the Bitcoin Olympics hackathon build, and perhaps create a proof of concept in the next week and a half?
Yeah, I think right now the main thing that I think people should focus on is kind of the fundamental infrastructural layers for Bitcoin and Web3. So right now, like as I mentioned, we're just in 2 months of the first web wallets being released, right? The first 2 months. And when you look at these web wallets they're still quite primitive. I mean, of course, it's only been 2 months, so you can't expect, completely full-featured, complete complete wallets to come out. But I think that just illustrates, how much at the ground level we are. If we're looking at this as like a city, we've just built like the first road, the first dirt roads, and the first like little mud, houses in terms of infrastructure. And I think, we can definitely look towards a vision of like glass skyscrapers in that metaphor, but we're really not quite there yet. I think the most useful thing to do is build something that you feel is quite ambitious, but then you'll realize that there are a lot of things that are missing. So even when we're building our marketplace, like things like figuring out which UTXOs are available to spend, including those in the mempool, like technical questions like that, you have to write the code yourself. You have to do it yourself. And so we've had to do a lot of things from scratch that really in other ecosystems, you'd have layers and tools to do it. I think the telltale sign of like a great builder is when they try to build something and they reach these roadblocks, which you're guaranteed to see, is you see it as an opportunity rather than a roadblock. I have a lot of people that come up to me and complain about the state of infrastructure in Stacks and Bitcoin and in others. And, I think it's not something to complain about. It's an incredible opportunity to start building those fundamental building blocks. If you are trying to build something ambitious and you reach issues, you reach roadblocks, you reach a lack of documentation, a lack of standards, that's frustrating, but nobody's just going to like build it out of the goodness of their heart one day. You really have to like go in, build tools, build infrastructure, unblock your own problems, and solve it for the community. And there's incredible business opportunity in that as well. So I'm really excited to see much more infrastructural stuff come out that allows for builders to build better things in a more agile way. I'll give an example. When Gamma started, back then it was STX NFT, the marketplace was the third product we released, right? Why the third? Because if we tried to release a marketplace on day one, it wouldn't have been possible. We didn't have an API for metadata. We didn't have an API for like querying smart contracts in the way that we needed to. We didn't even have a way, there wasn't even a way to basically say which NFTs does an address own, right? Now, I think the like natural inclination might have been to say, yeah, we'll just leave, the infrastructure isn't here. Clearly, there's not enough tooling to be able to build a marketplace. But instead of that, the first thing that we launched was just a website where you could say, type in your BNS name, we'll resolve it to a profile where you can see all your NFTs. And that, sort of forced us to build the infrastructure to pull the metadata, to, pull asset holdings, to filter through the asset holdings and sort them, and building all of this groundwork that allowed us to become the home for where people would go to see and view their NFTs. And then eventually, likewise, like a creator launchpad so people could create their NFTs. And then finally, once all that infrastructure was ready, we built the marketplace. That took like a month or two, right, of basically building up the groundwork and the infrastructure to get that ready. So I would like to see the same sort of things happen in Ordinals as well. We're focused on a lot of that too, fundamental infrastructural things. But I think those are the important questions. And as you build your hackathon projects, don't be afraid to pivot if you realize, hey, there's some more fundamental things that need to be built before we can really start tackling these higher level problems. Let's pave the roads and get the concrete ready before we start thinking about skyscrapers.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to think about it. Like great builders know how to tear out the progress. You can maintain your morale much better too. It's a common mistake to want to shoot too high, not make it, and then feel discouraged. It's better just to aim for like a sub goal a building block that will take you one step closer to your end goal. That's definitely great advice for everyone. The other thing that I want to underscore that you said is in this hackathon, there's going to be a lot of builders. You may be on the tech side, you may be on the marketing side. You guys will be working together. And I completely agree with Jamil in the sense that, the hallmark of a great builder is if you find an obstacle, is it going to knock you down, or are you going to knock it down, or are you going to find a solution to go over it or go through it or go around it, right? And I hope that through this hackathon, you'll find out which one you are if you don't know already, right? And a lot of times, if you're the one that figures out how to get through the obstacle, and if you could put a business model on it, then you're not just a builder, you're also an entrepreneur, you're a founder, right? And then you'll find that you can really turn dreams into reality. And I hope that this hackathon, for some of you, that you also discover this about yourself and perhaps the team that you're working with. With that said, let's get into specifics, Jamil. What, like, if just like maybe like your top picks, right? Your top picks so in about a week and a half, a little over a week and a half, our teams, our hackathon contestants, they're going to be turning in their submitting their final product. What would be like a project that, if you saw it got built, you was like, wow, I'd like to meet them and spend some time with them and see how we could, take this beyond the hackathon. You know what I mean? Like specifically, what would that look like?
Yeah, I'll give one example, and by no means is this like the only example, but I think it's one of the things that, for example, we've noticed as a roadblock, right, for many people, is the concept of collections in ordinals, for example. There have been proposals to do like parent-child inscriptions and things like that. And there's been a lot of progress there on, the Ord client. There's a fork of it and stuff like that. But I haven't seen things really come together in a cohesive way when it comes to collections. And what that generally means is, like, how can you build an API that where you give a parent inscription, you get a list of child inscriptions or something like that, or an API that shows you the list of all collections that exist on ordinals that were created via the sort of parent-child inscription thing. This is an example of another one where you see a lot of complaints about why doesn't ordinals support collections, and the ordinals protocol, the ordinal is kind of an open source standard, right? Anybody can build on top of it. Just because a functionality doesn't exist today doesn't mean it can't exist tomorrow. And I think you've seen great builders in the space, like Dhanani from On-Chain Monkey and others help push that forward. But I still think there's a lot more to do in sort of establishing that standard for collections and building tools on top of it to visualize and serve that information in the right way. Another creative one that might be helpful is, I also see a lot of people complaining about BRC20, right? And the fungible token standards on ordinals. They aren't great, right? I don't think they really have long-term value right now in terms of fungible token standards on ordinals. Now, there are plenty of options here, right? You could think about fungible token standards built on top of ordinals. You can think of them built on top of counterparty, on top of the sort of a colored coins like implementation. But we haven't really seen a consensus emerge for a fungible token standard that integrates well with ordinals. And I think that's another exciting and fun project, and also could be potentially lucrative. Like, if you develop the first fungible token standard and you release the first token that is established on that standard, I mean, you'll make a lot. That's a very lucrative project. And I think there's a lot of demand for how to build standards like collections, fungible tokens, other things, either on top of ordinals or in parallel to the ordinals protocol.
Wow, those are a couple of gems that you just shared with the public. So I want to reach out to you offline, and I want to if you could summarize those couple of ideas. We're going to put those in the Discord, in the hackathon Discord server, in a special channel, and we'll see if we can get somebody to, we'll see like who's smart enough to pick up on those. Yeah, that's thank you so much for sharing that, Jamil. Now we have a few minutes left here. What I want to bring it back to Gamma, and I'm actually curious. I've been meaning to ask you this question. Is we've just been too busy to connect. How did you understand the value of the ordinals so much earlier? Because there's so many marketplaces selling NFTs, et cetera, right? But not all of them jumped on this opportunity. And in fact, a lot of them are still like, trying to probably still debating about it internally, right? Even like some marketplaces that started before Gamma, right? Like, well, how were you guys able to sort of see this opportunity? Maybe if you share like, that thought process, maybe in the future, some other founder could use a similar thought process in their project, right? How were you able to do that? I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think for us, it kind of like I wish I could say it was like some, deep, unique insight, but it kind of felt like it was just the right thing at the right time. Like for the past year, we had been focusing on how to bring Bitcoin liquidity into NFTs, right? Because the reason we started building on Stacks was because Stacks is built on Bitcoin. It wasn't because it's just Stacks is another L1. Otherwise, we build on Near or Aptos or Avalanche or whatever, right? There are a million other chains we could look at. The reason we built on Stacks was because of this unique proposition of building on Bitcoin, and the people want to store their assets on Bitcoin. And so over the past year, we've been figuring out, how do we bring Stacks and Bitcoin closer? How do we, there's even this BTC NFTs working group with Patrick Stanley and some others that we were looking at. And we were trying to figure out, how do we enable native Bitcoin payments on Stacks? How do we get these NFTs to establish a closer connection to Bitcoin? And so this was like the top of mind question over the past maybe 12 months is, how do we bring NFTs closer to Bitcoin? How do we take native BTC payments on Bitcoin? How do we store the data directly on Bitcoin? And, the prevailing belief, and, of course, we were in this too, was that you can't do this on L1. So when Ordinals came out, this, as soon as we saw it, we were like, okay, this is like everything we've been thinking about and everything we've been trying to worry about how to do this on L2. Suddenly it's there, right? And so it would have been, negligent of us to not basically jump on this and say, what can we do with this? How can we experiment and play with this protocol? So I kind of regret it to some extent that I'm not as much of a degen as others, because I remember getting in at like inscription number 100 or something, and I inscribed like 2 test inscriptions very early on. And didn't care about making money. It was just like, this is so cool, right? I want to like figure out how we can build tooling for this and how we can integrate this in the product, because this is exactly what we were looking for. So I think like the takeaway from that is more to start with, don't chase like opportunity where you see like the consensus coming up on it like right now. Like if you tried to start building an Ordinals marketplace right now, it would be very difficult to do so. You're facing up against Magic Eden, against Ordinals Wallet, against Gamma, against all of these other players. So now you have to think about, what are your ideas that everybody else is sort of like pushing back against, or what are the narratives that other people are pushing back against? Because you only really make money and find opportunity when you have a counter consensus narrative. If you follow the consensus narrative, which right now it's still early in the consensus narrative for Ordinals, but it's becoming more consensus, your opportunities are much less. You have more competition. You have much less of an asymmetric bet. And so I think it's staying true to your like principles and your ideas, even when the narratives are against you. You will find a moment, if you truly believe in your ideas and truly believe there's opportunity there will be a moment where it breaks out, and you might contribute to that. It might fall into your lap in unexpected ways, like it did with Ordinals. But I think those that try and like chase the hot new thing every month, you're not going to make it anywhere doing that. You have to take a contrarian bet, be convicted on it, and it'll be much harder. It'll be very hard, right? There are times when you'll almost run out of money. There are times when you'll think it's hopeless. But if you truly believe in something, keep pushing, because the opportunities will come, and you'll be in the perfect place to take advantage of them. I can't hear you. I don't know if it's just me.
Whoops. No. Well said. Well said. That is great advice for entrepreneurs. It's so hard to do, right? Because I mean, I guess the difference between a startup and a business, right? Because sometimes people use that interchangeably, but it's not. Like a business, like you said, it's sort of like it's reached consensus. People want it. Other people have done it, and it's sort of like there's a blueprint for it, right? So like a restaurant is a business, but a startup, like you said, you sort of do have to have that that anti-view, right? The thing that other people haven't seen yet, right? And by definition, that is contrarian. And we are social creatures, so it's very hard to do something that's against our social circle. That takes, it's not just courage, but it takes like grit, and it also takes like I don't know how to explain it, but it's sort of like a feeling you have, right? A feeling you have that if you do not satisfy that feeling, you'll feel worse actually than the social, like I guess like being like, you know, the contrarian, right? In the social circle.
That's why it's also important, like I think more important than anything else at a high level is honestly just to surround yourself with people that inspire you and that think differently and that have, you know, non-consensus perspectives. I think that's really helpful to motivate you, push you to keep going. You see other people, your friend group, struggle to get things off the ground, but when they succeed, they really succeed. I think I really believe what you said, like humans are social creatures, and you know, you're the average of the 5 people you talk most to. And I think that's why it's so important to surround yourself with people that inspire you and that push you and that hold unconventional beliefs rather than that follow the crowd.
No, that's I think you just nailed you hit the nail on the head, right? It's I think that is the pattern. It's almost like a science, right, of success. Is, you know, we are the average of things around us. And so with that said, that's even more reason for everyone to join the Bitcoin Olympics hackathon. BTC Olympics.devpost.com, because you are going to meet a lot of awesome peers that also want to build great things on the Bitcoin frontier. And you'll get to meet a lot of speakers and founders and investors on this in our Discord, and even moving forward, because many of our speakers have generously offered their time to spend some time with the winners, right? The ideas that really excite them. And I think that in itself is already way more valuable than any kind of cash prize that anyone's giving. Oh, by the way, Gamma is also offering like a prize, right? A BTC prize for one of those ideas that that Jamil is excited about. So definitely don't miss out on that. Again, we can get those ideas from you, Jamil. We're gonna pop them in the Discord channel and get some people to work. I think you just did some people a big favor by sharing those ideas, because if I had time, I'd build those ideas too. If I had time, I would build those ideas as well. Okay, great. So, you know, we're running up on time here. How do people reach you? Like, is it your website? How do people learn more about what you're doing, Jamil?
Yeah, you can DM me at Jamil BTC, Jamil BTC. On Twitter, my DMs are open, so feel free to message me anytime. Gamma.io is a website. Jamil at gamma.io is my email. So if any of you want to reach out there, that's great too. But yeah, I'm excited to see what everybody's going to build here. And I think we're at such a pivotal moment in Bitcoin. Some of these ideas, you know, this is like being in Ethereum, you know, 5 years ago or something, right? This is the groundwork. You have the opportunity to build the protocols that will shape the future of Bitcoin and of Ordinals. This is very early days, and each one of you has the opportunity to make such a huge impact in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those encouraging words. I love how you quantified it. It's like, you know, Ethereum 5 years ago. It's like before, you know, now it's like you get into Ethereum, it's way too late, right? Or you're like sort of like picking up the crumbs. But now it's like it's the same situation, but on Bitcoin. So the opportunity potentially is a lot bigger. And I think we can stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from what worked and what didn't work on Ethereum, and hit the ground running in Bitcoin. I think is very exciting. Again, we're going to share those wish list items that Jamil shared, and try to build some of them. Try to build some of them, and keep an eye out for all the great things Gamma is doing in the ordinal space and beyond.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jamil. Thanks for coming on. Thank you for your support. Let's talk soon.